me formally welcome all of you to this special discussion on Northeast. We are very fortunate today to have among the best minds in our country working on Northeast. As you know, that EGROW Foundation is a policy-oriented think tank. We believe in research-based policy advice. And for the last year and a half, we have been conducting these webinars where we have handled and addressed contemporary issues. We have been very fortunate to get the best minds from across the world, including two Nobel laureates speaking at our forum. It is in this context that the union budget has been passed about a month back, and then we were thinking in the union budget, what are the policy initiatives that have been taken place that will give advantage to the Northeast? So therefore, we contacted Dr. Inderjeet Singh, who's just retired as secretary donor, and we were very lucky that he had time and was willing to join us. And then, of course, we went and invited the professors from Northeast. Let me introduce Dr. Inderjeet Singh ji before I go to the panelist and before I hand over the charge of today's session with Dr. Inderjeet. Dr. Inderjeet Singh ji is a PhD in economics from Punjab University, MSc in public economic management, MA economics, has a law degree and also a banking degree. He is the 1985 Kerala cadre IAS officer, worked in various capacities, but to me, the most important thing while we took this decision was because he has worked in the Ministry of Northeast in donor, and we invited him to chair the session today. The panelists today are Professor Madhu Prasad Bezbaruah. He is the professor and head Department of Economics, Guwahati University. 5 books, 50 papers in journals, and 28 articles in edited volumes. He is then joined by our next panelist, who's the associate professor at NEHU from 2012 to 2015, and then a full-fledged professor from 2015, Professor Sumarbin Umdor. And his expertise is in microfinance, rural credit. And then we have Professor Professor Sharma from Manipur University, and he is, just a second please. And Professor Sharma is also in the economics department at Manipur University, and he'll be also speaking to us today on the issues related to Northeast. He has done quite a bit of work on economic liberalization, also India's Look East policy, where he has contributed book chapters. He has a book, Quest for Development in Manipur, and that I think is important for today's discussion. With this, I hand over the session to Dr. Inderjeet Singh ji to conduct the proceeding. Dr. Inderjeet Singh.
Thank you, Charan Singh ji. I'm really happy to be part of today's very important program, and I'm sure in addition to the participants for this webinar, I will personally also learn a lot from my co-panelists who are from the academic field, and it will be a right mix of the academic knowledge coupled with my non-academic practicing knowledge as an administrator for long years, and especially having seen the ground reality in Northeast while working as secretary donor. So if my panelists agree, I will just have a brief presentation while I speak so that the participants can also have a look at the contents also. And later on, if any participant wants a copy of presentation, they can just email to me. I will have no issues in sharing a copy of the presentation. So if I can request that my presentation is put on the screen. Yeah. Now, as we see, the topic of our today's presentation is reflections on the progress. Each word is important. Reflections on the progress, and then gaps in development interventions in Northeast region of India. Next, please. Next, yeah. Now, why Northeast is important for us? Why we are meeting today as a special topic for Northeast? Why government is speaking about the development of Northeast? Why special attention to Northeast? These are the questions which will generally come to any viewer's mind. Why we are handling so much importance? It's important for us to know. I mean, of course, my esteemed panelists and many of us would know about Northeast, but some of the participants who are from outside, who are joining today, they would be knowing that Northeast, when we are talking, we talk of the 8 Northeastern states, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Tripura. They constitute 3.78% of the country's population and comprise 7.98% of the country's area. The population density varies from 17 in Arunachal Pradesh to 398 in Assam. These are the statistics as per the last census. Of course, when the new census comes, there will be some variations to these censuses and we will know. The scheduled tribes constitute 27.7% of total population, with states like Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland having scheduled tribe population above 85%. Now, Northeast is a pivot for regional connectivity. It's very important to know that Northeast shares its borders, almost 98% of its borders, land borders, which is 5,812 kilometers with neighboring countries of China, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar. This landlocked Northeast is connected with the mainland only by a narrow strip, which in common parlance people call it the chicken neck, and it's flanked by Nepal and Bangladesh on 2 sides. It's just a 22-kilometer wide chicken neck. So, and above all, as compared to the rest of the country, this area is relatively less developed. Next, please. Now, coming further on the importance of Northeast to all of us, Northeast has a complex socio-ethnic composition. It includes large number of ethnic tribal groups speaking 200 plus languages. Each has its own distinctive societal, cultural, and economic patterns, and many of these are different from the mainland India. Now, due to its location, demographic composition, and lack of infrastructure to the desired levels, Northeast remained isolated from India's dominant political and development paradigm. And added to that, the challenges of political violence, insurgency, ethnic conflict, and pressures due to undocumented migration have further added to the difficulties of the region. So that makes it a big security concern also for all of us. So that is how we see that this is very important for us. Next, please. Now, Northeast, as many of us know, faces a lot of challenges. The important ones are poor infrastructure, especially in the areas of connectivity, remoteness, hilly and difficult terrain, high operational costs, lack of employment opportunities, and so on and so forth. And in many important areas like health, education, infrastructure, many of its critical parameters are below the national average. Not only northeastern states are less developed than rest of the country, there are interstate and intrastate disparities also. But at the same time, Northeast has a lot of strengths. It has a lot of potential for development. And that is where the government and the rest of the civil society and private sector's role comes into being. Next, please. Now, as I was talking about Northeast strength, it's important for us to know, although it's a small area with less population, it has abundant, untapped, rich natural resources, youthful, highly educated workforce, and it has, more important, strong competitive advantage in variety of horticulture crops. To give you some example, the fruits and spices which are mostly organic or near organic in nature, there's a 53% marketable surplus in fruit production. The major fruits I have listed in the screen. And similarly, in the vegetables production, it is almost self-sufficient, and if situation arises, it can even have a marketable surplus even for the vegetable sector. The major spices like karbi eglong, ginger, Lakadong turmeric, Raja mircha, etc. They have got, some of these have got geographical indications, and they are in high demand outside India as well. Not only outside Northeast within India, but outside India as well. Next, please. Yeah. Now, coming to tea, 52% plus tea production comes from Northeast. Assam alone counts for more than 50% production. 22% plus production of countries silk production, 99% of countries Eri and Muga silk production. So this is how we see Northeast is having a lot of wealth, lot of economic wealth, lot of resources which are remaining untapped, and there is a lot of scope for tapping these valuable resources. And above all, Government of India gives it a liberal funding as compared to 60-40 in other parts of the country. Northeast gets 90:10 ratio funding. Next, please. Now, it has a lot of opportunities, as I was saying earlier, it has a lot of strengths. We need to create a brand Northeast for its products so that its products get a good market and its people and the farmers get remunerative prices elsewhere in the country as well as outside country when these are exported. So there's a rich commercial crop based and there's a well-educated workforce, but the exploitation of these resources have not been to the optimum level. So as our Prime Minister in one of the meetings said, Northeast is a new engine of India's growth. It needs to be helped. We need to facilitate this growth and help it to grow much faster and come at par with the rest of the country. Next, please. Now, when we are coming to today's topic, it says reflections on the progress and gaps in development. Question arises, how to measure the development, how to measure the progress, and how to measure the gaps in development. There are many ways. My co-panelists will also tell their views, how to get to that. For convenience sake, I have picked up Sustainable Development Goals as one of the important parameters to tell the audience where does the northeastern state stand, what are the gaps, and what need to be done more in future. Now, for the benefit of the audience, these Sustainable Development Goals, as many of us know, they are the set of targets across various sectors to be met by member states of United Nations by 2030. And these were adopted by 193 countries, including India, at the UN General Assembly in 2015. These SDGs have 17 goals, 169 related targets, and 232 indicators. Now, after this, what India did, Niti Aayog had issued a series of SDG Index. Till today, 3 series of this index have been issued, the latest one being 2020-21, and which was preceded by 2019 and 2018. This 2020 series had 115 indicators, covers 17 SDG targets and 17 goals. Now, as per in 2020-21, when we see this, during 1920 and 1820, the country's overall score on this index increased by 6 and 3 points. It was 57 in 2018, it became 60 in 19 and 66 in 2020 index, which is the latest in the series. Kerala was a top ranker in all these series with the score of 75 as per the last rank. And amongst union territories, Chandigarh was the top ranking union territories. Bihar, unfortunately, happened to be on the bottom of the string. Now, coming to our Northeast, because this was just, I wanted to give as an introduction about this SDG. During this 1819, when the last index came, amongst the 28 states, 22 states improved their index score. And 3 states, the index remained constant, and in 3 states it declined. But in 1920, all the states and UTs except Dadar Nagar Haveli improved their index score. And amongst the 28 states, 10 states improved their rank, 6 states' rank remained constant, and the rank of 12 states declined. Amongst UTs, rank of 3 states increased. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now, as per the 2020 index, amongst 20 states, 3 Northeast states are having rank below 20. This is where is a cause of concern for us. Progress of development when we talk. These 3 states, Assam out of 28 states is ranked 26th. And Assam is the biggest state amongst all the 8 states. So it's a cause of concern. It gives us in brief, in an overall perspective, gives us an idea where the states in Northeast stand in terms of development, taking overall index. Of course, it's a shortage of time. Otherwise, I have the index for each. Yeah. Mr. Charan Singh wanted to say something. You were raising your hand. Okay, because I saw you were raising hand. So I have the indicator-wise, goal-wise, these things, but time being short, any participant interested in further details, I will show a brief chart which may not be that visible in the screen because of the large data on it, but I will be open to share this data with any of the participants. It's in public domain. The reports of Niti Yog are in public domain. Now, Assam with 26th, Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya ranked 22nd. So these 3 states ranked amongst 28 is very low. Then 4 states have a rank between 10 to 20. Nagaland is at 19, Manipur 16, Tripura 15, Mizoram 12. I will show a figure where these ranks of all the 3 series have been shown. Sikkim is a top ranking state amongst Northeastern state with a rank of 8 as per the last series. Now, based on this score, Niti Yog has classified states into 4 categories based from their distance from the target. What is target? Target is a overall index score of 100, which is to be achieved by 2030 as per the UN resolution. Now, achievers are those states which have already got a score of 100. Front runners are with a score of 65 or more, performers with a score of 50 and above, and aspirants with a score below 50. And as per this classification, there was no state in the country which was achiever, which means which have achieved 100%. Or neither was there a state below 50, that is aspirant category. So all the other states were between the 2 categories out of 4. And as per 19 index, amongst the 8 states in the front runner category, Sikkim was the only Northeast state, while all other remaining states were in the performer category. However, as per 2020 index, this shows a improvement. Amongst 14 states in the front runner category, the 3 states, Sikkim, Mizoram, and Tripura were in this category. So over the 2019 to 20 index, the 2 states showed a good progress to go to the next higher category. Next, please. Now, in 2019, amongst the northeastern states, the 3 states improved both their score and rank. 4 states, although they improved their score, but their rank fell. What does it mean for some of the participants? Their score improved, but rank fell, which means the other states relatively did better than that. Although these states also improved their rank, but other rest of the country states improved their score by a higher proportion. So their rank also improved. Northeastern states like Sikkim, Tripura, Nagaland, and Assam improved their rank over 2018, with Sikkim showing a best performance with a jump of 8 positions. But in 2020, only Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, and Mizoram improved their rank. Sikkim, Nagaland slipped by 1 rank and Manipur and Assam by 3 ranks. And it is important to know that except for Mizoram and Sikkim, only 2 states which have a SDG score equal to or better than national average. Remaining 6 states, the index score is below the national average. This is again a cause of concern that 6 states score, overall score, which we will even dissect to different sectors, is below the national average. Now, when during my last few months of my tenure as secretary donor, when we saw this position, I spoke to Niti Yoga and told them, look, the state level parameters also sometimes don't bring out the picture clearly that within the state, there are region-wise disparities. And that is what made us to go first time for Northeast. Northeast states happened to be the first one to do. We did something called District SDG Index for Northeast region. And this report of District and SDG, which only Northeastern states have done, no other state has done even till today. It was released in the month of August 2021. And everybody across the board appreciated this index because it gave us a great insights into district level data and district wide position. We could make out, in fact, we did comparison across all the 8 states, the topmost performing districts and bottommost performing district in the entire region within states, so that there's then some sort of a focused developmental approach for those districts which are lagging behind. Next, please. Now, this chart, I don't know how clearly it may not be visible possibly to participants because so much stuff has been put on this chart. It shows all comparison of the 3 series 20, 19 and 18 for all the northeastern states, as well as the best performing state Kerala, best performing state UT and India. But don't worry if participants are not able to read, I will be happy to share this chart with them. And this at a glance shows where the states moved up or moved down. The red arrows shows the position where they came down, and the green upward arrows where the position moved up, and the yellow dots where the constant position remained. Next, please. Again, this chart is too clumsy. I'm not going to this thing. It was just to tell you that we have the goal-wise data, state-wise data for all the 3 series. Any participants who want to have a further details, please feel free to just email to me or WhatsApp to me. I'll be happy to share this table and they can benefit from them. Next, please. Next, yeah. Now, what all has been done so far? Question is by whom? I will restrict myself little bit to government, being from government sector. Of course, states themselves have done a lot. Private sector, NGOs, civil society has done a lot. So everybody has contributed towards the development of the Northeast. It's not government alone. But as I said, just in these few slides, I will just say, number one, Government of India gives assistance at 90-10. All non-exempt ministries are mandated to spend 10% of their budgetary resources for Northeast. This is very important. Northeast population is only 3.8% of the country's population. But long back in 2001 itself, Government of India took a very good decision that each ministry will spend 10% of its resources for Northeast. And if you see annual budget of 10% for the current year of previous years, it is 60,000 crore plus. The 10% GBS is very important. All of us must understand. 60,000 crore plus, if you look into a 5 years perspective plan, if we make roughly 3 lakh crore of resources coming from Government of India alone, ministries, central ministries, I think it's a very good resource. But unfortunate part, some of these resources are remaining unutilized. Some of the ministries are not able to utilize these resources. States are not able to make best use of these resources. To cite just one example, I will give. Ministry of Agriculture's annual budget under this 10% GBS is roughly 13,000 crore. But for last 3 years, the utilization have not been more than 40%. So 60% is remaining unutilized out of 30,000 crore of just one ministry. So that is where a lot of efforts need to be done to get best use of these resources. Of course, as I said, I have listed some of the things. I'm not going to read word by word. In the field of infrastructure, railways, road, airports, government has done a lot of infrastructure development. In fact, the latest one is the Greenfield Airport coming up at Holangi in Arunachal Pradesh. And 3 years back, Pakyong Sikkim Airport was completed. The capital rail connectivity projects are going on. The capital road connectivity projects are going on. And next screen, please. And some of the other important projects are like Northeast Gas Grid, which will cover all the Northeast states by 1,656 kilometer pipeline. AIMS at Guwahati, National Sports University at Manipur, so on and so forth. There are many, these are just as some examples. I'm not giving an exclusive complete list of various projects. The idea is just to just tell the listeners that although a lot of works have happened, but there's scope for doing much more. Next, please. Now, this comes important. What needs to be done? As I said just now, even as secretary donor, when I was there, my concern always used to have been optimal utilization of 10% GBS resources. These are very valuable resources, 65,000 crore per year from Government of India, coupled with 10% addition from states, plus states' own budget and resources coming from extra budgetary resources. I think if these are utilized properly, Northeast can do wonders in terms of financial resources. But there are problems. There are a lot of issues in utilizing these resources. There are cost overruns, time overruns. I have seen it very closely, even for the projects which donor ministry and the Northeast Council executes. There are long delays in completion of the projects, which ultimately make the quality of these projects suffer. And what happens is, this sends a wrong signal to the finance ministry when we go to them for higher resources next year. They say, look, they have not been able to use their previous resources. The projects which ought to have been completed in a 2 to 3 years time span sometimes keep hanging for as long as 8 to 10 years. So that was really a cause of concern. And other important thing which I would say, Northeastern Council can play a very important role. As of now, it's playing a very limited role, and I feel, and we wanted Northeast Council restructuring so that it is a state-of-art resource center for the Northeastern state with necessary resources, knowledge and skills to enable these states for implementing agencies to plan properly, execute proper projects. It should promote research and innovation. And there's a lot more which Northeast Council can do, which I think needs overall restructuring of the Northeast Council. Now, when I was talking of this 10% GBS, I must mention the unutilized resources get carried over to something called NLCPR, non-lapsable central pool of resources. In theory, it is non-lapsable. Over the period, resources amounting to roughly 90,000 crore plus have accumulated in this fund. But we have not been able to take back these resources from Finance Ministry, again due to the reasons that the utilization of previous resources is not good. Fortunately, this budget, first time, the donor ministry was successful in getting one new scheme called PM Divine scheme sanctioned, under which to begin with 1,500 crore rupees was sanctioned to Northeastern Council with an assurance that if you utilize it well, fine, we'll give you more resources next year. So it is a vicious cycle. We have to show good performance to get more resources. If the performance in the past is not good, it becomes difficult even for donor ministry to convince the finance ministry for better resources. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, I think perhaps this is last slide. So what we did was, like, when this in donor, we said we will help the states in formulating state-specific, sector-specific holistic development plans. And we took initiatives with the help of the states, and holistic development plans were prepared in the sectors of bamboo, oil palm, horticulture to begin with. Now the time has come to implement these plans, and I'm sure resources will not be a constraint. I think I should stop here, and now I would invite my panelists to hear them with their valuable observations and valuable comments, and give us the benefit of their great experience and knowledge of having worked in Northeast. May I request Dr. Bezbaruah to speak to all the participants?
Thank you very much, our chairperson of this panel discussion, Dr. Inder Singh. And your presentation was very detailed, and basically you have covered the introduction of the region and also the contemporary situation, particularly regarding development progress and constraints. So that will really help me to save some time here. I'll try to avoid repeating what you have said, but some references will obviously have to be made.
Sure.
Okay. Now my presentation is going to be slightly different. I'd like to go back slightly, not very deep, but slightly back in history, to basically to share with our audience. Here is a forum we have found, which is where we can tell about the Northeast story in a way, how those difficulties of the Northeast, because many people see the Northeast region as a difficult region. So how these things have cropped up, and how the central union government has responded to the difficulties over different phases of policy making. And finally, I would like to close up with narrating, or rather counting some of the things which I believe the region inside, the states and the people inside should be doing for them, rather than the central looking for the central government to do it. So I'd like to share my presentation now, and try to keep the limit of 15 minutes. And before I get into my PowerPoint presentation, I'd also let me place in record my gratitude to Dr. Charan Singh for organizing this and giving us 3 voices from the Northeast to sort of, share our voice in an all India kind of a forum. All right, as you can see, the title is slightly different from the theme. All right, and let me get along. Can you all see my slides? Yeah. Can you all see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So now the region called Northeast India is something, it is a new name, it is a post-partition, post-independent kind of construct. Now, in the colonial period, this part, actually, this what we call the Northeast India today, actually was a part of the eastern, extension of the British Empire, which spilled over to the Burma, and this was not exactly a region as such, what we call the Northeast today, it has 3 types of administrative arrangements. First, there are the 2 tiny princely states of Tripura and Manipur. The rest of it was called all Assam province, but then you have to understand that there were 2 parts, particularly the hills, the hilly region, which constitute nearly the 70%. I mean, they were inhabited by tribes, basically. These were not very seriously administered by the colonial administrators, and these were left to the tribes for their own self-governed, to be self-governed as per their traditional institutions. Now, the colonial administration was very well embedded in the plains, where also their colonial exploitative economic activities were also present. Now, what happened actually is that when the partition of India took place, this region, which was, as my predecessor said, is very heterogeneous in topography, ethnicity, and also economic and administrative, organization. This was bound by a border, a boundary, which is 98%, shared with the foreign countries, and only 2% shared with the rest of India. This is a 2% link via the chicken neck. So this boundary suddenly created a region called the Northeast. It was not even called Northeast at that time, but gradually what happened, the name Assam was not very appropriate for the whole region, although most of it was called Assam before independence and soon after independence also. And, as there was political and administrative reorganization in the 70s and 80s, many states were created out of Assam. And I think the first initially they used to call Northeastern region. Now, people later on realized that the part India has to be there. Otherwise, this will be a sort of psychological kind of advantage to the separatist kind of organizations, some of which have been active. So, Northeast India became a more popular name for the whole region. And so it got currency. And now, if we look at, I'm showing this map for just one purpose. If you look at the map on the western side, west of Northeast, it is all more or less homogeneous green. And this actually extends to the Brahmaputra, around the Brahmaputra. So the Brahmaputra Valley, and most of which is mostly the plain area of the Northeast, this has very much, in not only topography, but in various other aspects, they are very similar to Bangladesh or the Indo-Gangetic plain, in organization of economic life and otherwise also population density wise. But you can see, surrounding the Brahmaputra Valley, there are all those mountainous other colors which are showing higher altitude, and there actually the situations are quite different. So when you're talking about the Northeast, I think it's very important. Not if you don't go into the all 200, 120 tribes or something or categories, at least it is very necessary to say that to realize that the situation in the plains and the hills are not exactly directly, they cannot be clubbed together into one particular, analysis. So this is my point of making the, showing you the map. Now, I'm calling it the region of 7 sister states. Actually, I've never got, although government of India has clubbed Sikkim with the Northeast region, I've never got to, take, I have nothing against Sikkim, but at the same time, when you talk about Northeast or you're trying to analyze the situation in the Northeast, I have some difficulty in, clubbing Sikkim with the Northeast. My main reason is that, the rest of the 7 sister states, they have gone through, they have a shared history. They have gone through that, pang of partition of the country and which, of course, Sikkim was not a part of it, and also Sikkim has actually joined India in 1976 only, much later, 20 years after our independence. And my predecessor has also shown that, in many parameters, actually, Sikkim doesn't fit into the whole thing. So my analysis will be mostly confined to the 7 states, I think, which I find more comfortable to handle. So some numbers are very easy to remember. Okay, it's less than 8%, of course, of the area, less than 4% of population, and under 3% of the economy of India is there from the Northeast. So basically, population density overall is less, and of course, economically, it is slightly behind all India. That is why 4% of population has about 2.5% of GDP of the country. But again, if you look at the mountainous region, this is 70% of the whole state region is actually mountainous, but it has such a sparse population. The population density is about only 61%, as per 2011 census. Whereas, and most importantly, there are certain very important features of the hills. It used to be traditionally having a community ownership of land and shifting cultivation. All right, so this is traditional, but then the transition to the individual private property in land, that has not been completed after so many years of even independence. There is some amount of reluctance, to sort of address this issue of land ownership, and this has created many problems, which I don't have the time now to explain. I can come to that later. Now, if you contrast to the mountainous regions, you find 30% of the area is plain, and which holds actually 70% of population, and population density is much higher than all India population density. And besides that, this has a similar, as I said, similar kind of economic activities like cattle cultivation, like in Bihar or West Bengal or Orissa or something, like the rest of eastern region, rice cultivators mostly. Then, of course, under the colonial period, the modern industries were developed in the in the plain areas. Tea plantation was mentioned, oil industries, then you have various forest-based industries and so on and so forth. Now, the railways and the industries were mostly developed for colonial exploitation, but then this has a spillover effect. So some modern component of the economy was there in the plains. And at the time of independence, if you go by the per capita income, actually Assam has a per capita income pretty high up, and I think it was the fourth highest per capita income state. Although I'm not saying that the economic conditions are everyone was as good. Actually, many people say that it was an enclave economy of the the colonial capitals, which actually popped up the per capita income. So general conditions of the people, it doesn't say the general state of economic living conditions of the people were as good. But whatever it was, after the whole problem of the Northeast actually started soon after independence. What happened? Because of the partition, its traditional link through the East Bengal region to the rest of the world got completely cut off. Actually, 1965 up to 1960, some connections were there. After the 65 war, it was completely cut off. And as a result of which, what happens actually, this region became very expensive for investors and all that. And there were security concerns, the war with Pakistan, there was war with China. Chinese almost came down to the Brahmaputra Valley city called Tejpur and all that. So there was security. And since foreign capital, which was the driving force for the economy of the region earlier, they have lost interest. They have actually started withdrawing. And at the same time, there was not much of domestic, either private or public sector investment. Remember, those were the times where I'll come back to this point a little later. And there was, it was mentioned, there was influx of population, refugees as well as economic migrants, particularly up to the year 1971. There was heavy, if you look at the 3 decades population growth rate in the region from 1941 to 1971, it was pretty high. So the region had to absorb this. Its economy had gone down and it has to absorb this, extra population. And there was also another thing which was happening endogenously in the region. During the colonial period, because of Christian missionaries' activities and other activities, Ramakrishna Mission also, various kind of activities, this education spreaded among some sections of the population, particularly among tribes also, and the middle class started emerging. Now, once the middle class emerges, who are the, basically they have started articulating their identity aspirations. So their own, ethnic and identities aspirations were articulated, and there was, so therefore to fulfill that, identity aspirations, sometimes these movements, identity movements actually took violent turns also. This has also created a lot of problems from the developmental other perspective for the region. So these are I would say the genesis of the troubles which afflicted the Northeast region earlier part. And of course, the government has taken policies, and there has been definitely turnaround from there. I'm coming to the positive part of the story, but then you have to wait for 2 more slides for the positive part of the story. So let's look at the Union government's policy approach to the region. In the 1950s and 60s, remember, this was the post-independent decades. India was trying to have planned development process. The public sector was most dominant. So most of the decisions were taken, investment decisions were taken by the governments. Now, that was a period which the region feels that the government response to the difficulties of the region, the post-partition difficulties of the region, was not adequate, and that actually led to some feeling of alienation among the people of the Northeast. And one symbolic thing was that refinery which was set up, 3 million ton refinery which was set up at Barauni. Experts wanted to, suggested that this should be in the central Brahmaputra Valley somewhere. Okay, but then that was seen, and that was cited by many extremist organizations, separatists and other organizations, that this is a colonial attitude of the central government to that. I'm not supporting that point of view, but I'm saying that this was something which was utilized for a long time by many people for drawing sympathy, or that in increasing that feeling of alienation. Of course, after 50s and 60s, the government realized that you need to put more attention to the Northeast. So in 1970s and 80s, we find that central government, the union government started taking more interest and more active policies. But these are also not very proactive at that time. In the 70s and 80s, these are more sort of reactive kind of policies, firefighting kind of policies. What it did is actually it's administratively it reorganized the regions, and that actually to a great extent was in the response of the identity aspirations. So Mizoram wanted a separate state, Meghalaya wanted a separate state. So these were granted, but this did not really actually, sort of completely resolve the problem, because there are other groups which were encouraged, like Boros and all. They were encouraged because the state can be something which you can get, and many people thought that if you get into insurgency and all that, then of course central government listens to you and all that, and you're likely to get something out of it. So that was one not very successful. Then government, of course, realized when they created the smaller 7 states, they also realized that these are not going to be fiscally viable. They are not going to be able to raise enough resources. So they created this special category. Of course, other states were also included, by which the smaller new states will get, much more liberal, shares in the devolution of central funds. So that was created, and these actually fueled some kind of growth in the economy because of administration, new administrative setup. But this didn't last very well. But real game-changing policies came in the post-1991 period, post-economic reform period. I'd like to recall, remind everyone that Manmohan Singh, who was the architect of the modern economic reforms, was an MP from this region, and he really took very seriously the backwardness and difficulties of the region, and he actually had the planning commission set up, the Shukla Commission, who actually went to the details of this, problems of the region, and it has really come up with the things that yes, in basic services and basic infrastructure, the region is really backward, so it deserves special treatment and all that. So, and secondly, when India adopted this market-oriented economic reforms, obviously it was clear that the regions like Northeast are not going to get a great deal of, they are going to have more difficulties. They already had difficulties post-partition. Difficulties are going to increase. So to counter that, many measures were taken, which I will not like to repeat because it has already been explained. The subsidies and incentives were given to investors to set up industries here. You're going to get 10 years of tax holiday and those kind of things, both excise and income tax and so on and so forth. But that didn't really work very well, unless basic economic conditions change, subsidies probably will not work. The special packages were announced by various prime minister, Bajpayee ji, then Devi Gowda ji, when they visited, they have announced special packages, and 10%, this was already explained, I'll not go into it. So development programs were also given on the concessional thing. So availability of fund ceased to be a problem in the in this new sort of century. This ceased to be a problem for the Northeast. So now there can be no sort of think that the center is not giving resources. It has been actually flooding the regions with resources. But then we have inherent absorption problems and all that. So this could not be the funds. Obviously, like my predecessor said, all the funds could not be properly absorbed. So that created some problems and some cynicism also. But whatever was absorbed, there was an impact of this. I'm going to show you in 2 slides. If you look at these slides, you find that particularly in the 12th plan period, 2007 to 12, the growth rate in most of the states have actually come up, and some of the states growth rates were even higher than that of all India level. All right, and so earlier, it has the whole region. Most of the states had very poor growth rates. Now it started picking up in the what you call 11th and 12th plan period. After that, this is a more contemporary sort of picture. The blue bars actually shows the per capita income levels. So several states have higher per capita income levels than all India, and the region itself, of course, is still lagging behind. Okay, the all India level. But the important thing is that if you look at the height of the black spots, these are the growth rates. The growth rate of per capita income in the Northeast region, which was recorded in the recent years of 17, 18, were much higher than that of all India, which means that region is per capita income wise, there is a convergence of the per capita income to the all India level. And I would like to attribute this to the proactive policies of the government to put in fund. Of course, I'm saying it could have done even better if it was absorbed properly, spent very efficiently, but with the imperfect efficiency and imperfect absorption also, it has had a revival of economic activities in this region. I could go into details, but then that will require a whole lecture. So let me not carry on. Now, what happened after the post-planning? We know about that planning process has been sort of closed, and we have a different kind of a model for economic development now. Now, what happened actually is that this special category became a demand for all the states. All states wanted to have a special category status for this devolution. Then 14th Finance Commission, therefore, very smartly sort of removed this whole category called special category states. Instead, the regions which demanded the special category, like being the border states, mountainous states, these were sort of structured into the devolution formula of the central funds. And as a result of which, the most of the states of the Northeast, which are being a mountainous and border states, of course, they continued to get the liberal devolution of funds. So that actually didn't affect rest of the states, but of course, Assam got a little less. So Assam suffered a little because of the 14th Finance Commission awards. Now, after Prime Minister Modi came to power, he actually had a special interest in the Northeast, and he actually wanted to, invigorate the process of development of the region. So he very firmly said that we have been hearing about a look-east policy for a long time, 25 years. Initially, the people in the Northeast were very, very sort of, excited about it, but then 25 years it delivered very little for the Northeast. So therefore, Modi ji also said that, no, we have to act this now. So under act this policy, actually government took initiative to connect this Northeast region with the, prosperous Southeast Asian region. And that, of course, has not been greatly successful, partly not so much because of our government initiative, but mostly because the conditions in Myanmar has been pretty volatile, up and down and all. So that is a barrier. I think Iswar is going to talk about it. But other plank of act this policy, the connectivity improvement has received really a lot of boost in the under this new NDA government. Many of the projects were there, but they were languishing. But these were completed very expeditiously. New projects have come up. Many more bridges over the Brahmaputra and other things have come up. And roads are much better, Arunachal Pradesh and all that. So these have been really very actively pursued. I think these are going to really create new opportunities for the Northeast. And my predecessor again talked about the new, revival for the special packages for the Northeast, besides what comes under the overall budget, that has been revived in that 22-23 thing. I think this special attention for the Northeast is really necessary, not only for its development, but also for the security concerns for the country. You see what Putin is doing in Ukraine, that might encourage China also to be more adventurous, and that can be a problem. Of course, India is not as helpless as Ukraine, India being a nuclear power, but still you cannot really rule out the possibility of that. So Northeast need to be, properly connected within and also with the rest of the country, so that, that security concern is also addressed. At the same time, development issues of the Northeast are also taken care of. I'm just coming to the last slide. I'm sorry I've taken more time than what was allotted for me. I'm coming with the concluding thoughts, where I'm not trying to talk about what the central government is doing or not doing. I'm trying to talk about what the people in the Northeast could do. So basically, besides what union government's effort to sort of integrate this region further politically and economically with the rest of the country, the region has a lot to do for itself. There's the identity aspiration is one of the major issues in the Northeast. Various groups are there, they have their language, they have their culture, and they want to preserve it, which is absolutely legitimate. And this is also can be a resource. It can be seen as a resource rather than as a source of problem. But the problem starts when identity aspirations become too much and every community wants to have a separate homeland. Now, this is something I think backward looking. This cannot really materialize. Again, I think to discuss that we require a separate seminar. So I think that the identity aspirations need to be encouraged, need to be supported, but the central government and the state governments need to come up with a policy that no more creation of separate homelands. Exclusive separate homelands are very dangerous, actually. It's not good for everyone, you know. You give a homeland to a particular community, another community living there becomes second-class citizen. This is a major problem. And second thing is that the identity aspirations, identity issue and the developmental issue should be taken as a single undertaking. These are not separate things. Because once modern-oriented development process starts in, people start, you know, understanding each other, they work together, and the inter-community understanding improves, the xenophobia goes away, and then, of course, you know, you can pursue your identity aspirations in a different kind of dimensions. I think that is extremely important. Uh, Now, another thing is that because of this identity issue again, many people want more inner line permits, you know, more barriers they want to hold. Now, this is something I think is counterproductive because you see the whole region, if you look at, it is a region of 4.5, crores of people. Okay, 45 million crores of people. It's a huge market inside. But because the markets are fragmented, you know, the region has not been able to benefit from economically. So if the markets are allowed to be integrated, the barriers, instead of, you know, building those barriers, if we try to reduce these barriers, actually, what may happen actually is that the complementarities within the hills and plains have very complementary resource allocations that can be exploited, and that can be actually lead to a, you know, self-sustaining development process inside. All right. And finally, last point I'm trying to make here is that, you know, the states, and many people say that, you know, the smaller states who receive most of their finances, fiscal resources from the central, they have developed a, you know, what you call dependency syndrome. It's something leftist kind of idea. They say that because you receive the money from the center, you become too dependent on that, and therefore you cannot have an indigenous developmental model of your own thing. To some extent, this may be quite true, because you'll find this is the inequality pattern. If you study, you know, people who are connected with the government sector, they're much better off. So perhaps I think this region's high time for them to sort of, you know, make effort to raise their resources. I mean, this is possible. I'll take just one more minute. Moderator, sir, I'll just take one more minute. I have a radical kind of or unconventional kind of a suggestion. You see, there's a very silly rule which says that if you are a tribal like Umdor, my friend, who will be speaking, I believe, very shortly, and you're serving in a tribal area, you don't have to pay income tax. Okay, that's all right if you're not paying tax to the government of India. But the middle class, there is a major middle class coming up in all the tribal states, and they are capable of paying the tax. Suppose we don't have income tax, the state can tap these resources in an alternative kind of different kind of a taxation. Okay, because these people are capable of paying tax, there is no sense of not collecting tax. So in that, if they do this, their own people will be contributing to their state kitties, and this will also sort of, you know, increase your sort of resource independence, and then you can, of course, you plan your own economic development contributed by your own people. I think this is something, again, many people may not like it, but I think we have to think about, I think, out of the box sometimes. So with this, I conclude. I have spoken very fast. I don't know if I could register that. And thank you very much for giving me the extended time, round of time.
Thank you, Professor Bezbaruah, for your valuable insights. Now we are somewhat running behind schedule. I would request the subsequent panelists to have self-monitoring in terms of time. And without wasting much time, I will request Professor Umdor to take the stage.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay.
You are.
So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. First of all, I just want to say that, you know, it's indeed a privilege to be in this panel, especially with Dr. Inder Singh as a chairman, with his very, you know, deep insight. He's been working with the ministry, so he knows much better than maybe all of us combined because of the work that he's been doing in this region. I was surprised when I got this email from Dr. Chandra when he asked me to join the panel, and he suggested that what should be the topic. So I thought that, well, why not have a reflection on the progress and the gaps in the development intervention. I'll limit myself only to that. If you look at the development intervention of Government of India in the Northeastern region, I see three prominent ones. One is in terms of the fiscal sphere. other one is in terms of the place-based industrial policy, and the other one is in terms of the Look East and now the Act East policy. Now, I'll not repeat what the other panelists have said. If you just look at progress, you know that as a northeastern state, we are part of the special category state along Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and we have been very much benefited by the flow of funds from the government of India. Besides, at some point of time, if you look at the old estimates of the donor ministry, at some point of time, the per capita capital investment in the northeastern region was as much as 5 times more than what was invested in the general category state. And that was the reason behind why a state like Bihar started saying that, why don't we also, get included in the special category status. But besides the fund that we used to get under the normal central assistance, 30% of the normal central assistance used to come to special category state, with just 5% of the population. Besides that, we should also know that, when it comes to external assistance for external project, there also, 90% of the assistance from the, World Bank and other, development organization comes to the Northeast. 90% comes as grant, 10% comes as loan, while in the other state, it is not so. And then, of course, the chairman has also mentioned about the special grants that we get under the NEC and also the non-lapsable pool. So I will not go into that. Even today, although the special category status has been withdrawn, in terms of central sponsor scheme, we are still continuing with the 90-10 sort of ratio. 90-10, 90 is your, comes from the central government, and 10 is our state, contribution. So in terms of progress, this is what we've been seeing in the fiscal sphere, that the region has really been benefited, by the flow of fund from the central government. The other intervention that the central government has done is in terms of what we call the place-based or location-based policy, industrial policy. Now, if you look at the northeastern region, you'll find that, right from the 1968, Assam and Nagaland at that time, and 12 other states, were categorized as industrially backward region, and government, extended a lot of concession to this region in terms of income tax exemption, in terms of transport subsidies, capital investment subsidies, so on and so forth. But the major intervention of the central government when it comes to the industrial sector in the region is in terms of the Northeast, industrial policy of 1997, which in 2007 got changed into the Northeast industrial and investment promotion policies, and which in 2018 now has been repackaged as the Northeast Industrial Development Scheme. So this is the other intervention that we see in the Northeastern region. The third intervention that we see in the Northeastern region, specific to the region, is in terms of the Look East and, now the Act East, Look East and now the Act East policy, where, the government intention is to link the Northeastern region economically, culturally, and also strategically with the Southeast Asian countries. And as the previous panelists have said, that we do hear a lot of talk on the Look East and Act East policy, but on the ground, we are not seeing much movement. So therefore, I'll not dwell into that. However, what I want to highlight here is that what I don't see as someone who is from this region, who worked in this region, is an intervention in the agricultural sector. Now, let me give you an example. Industries has been a focus. We have been the central government has been giving a lot of money, pouring a lot of money through the Northeast Industrial Policy in terms of the various concessions that is given to industries. But 50 to 55% of the population of the Northeastern region still depends on agriculture. Now, the chairman has said that agriculture, we are very rich in terms of horticulture. That is true. Just one product, I'll give you an example. The one product that we have, which is, is turmeric. Look at turmeric in the Northeastern region. India is the major exporter of turmeric. 78% of the world turmeric comes from India, and 10% of that comes from the Northeastern region. Our turmeric, especially in Meghalaya, the Lapadong, has the highest curcumin content, which you all know, But in spite of that, in spite of this huge potential, we don't have a curcumin extraction point in the Northeastern region. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here is that if you look at agriculture, we've all seen, the minimum support price has been in the news for a very long time. Farmers have been protesting with regard to the minimum support price. They are afraid of, the withdrawal of minimum support price. Now, if you look at the agriculturists in the Northeastern region, Horticulture, if you have a farmer producing vegetables, producing fruits, we produce a lot of fruits. Now, what happens is that in the rest of the country, you have a price support system in the name of minimum support price. In the northeastern region, most of the things that we produce does not come under the minimum support price. 21 of the product that we have does not come. Horticulture is not out of it. But in its place, there is an intervention, there is an ad hoc policy, an ad hoc price policy called the Market Intervention Scheme. Now, in the Market Intervention Scheme, what is supposed to be done is that if there is a glut in a market, if there's overproduction in a market, and the price of agriculture production of price of agriculture produce, horticulture produce comes down, the state government is supposed to announce a minimum support price, which under this Market Intervention Scheme to help the farmers, from suffering losses. You'll be surprised that in the northeastern region, the usage of market intervention is so less, and primarily why is because under this market intervention scheme, whatever subsidy is given to the farmers in terms of price support, 75% comes from the center, 25% has to come from the state government. Most of the state government doesn't have this 25%. So while we are focusing a lot on the industrial sector, we're giving a lot of money to the industrialists to support their activities. And by the way, if you look at the industrial policy of the Northeast, right, from 1997, which we have started, it is not very transparent in the sense that we don't actually know what has been the actual benefit of it, except for the Tata Consultancy, evaluation that was done by Tata Consultancy in 2004. After that, we don't actually know what has been the outcome of this intervention, in terms of where crores of money have gone to these industries, in terms of productivity, increase in productivity, in terms of employment, because this is what is the need of the hour in the northeastern region. So again, coming back to agriculture, I think when it comes to gap, this is one of the first gap that I see is that, when it's not that the central government has not intervened in terms of, special horticulture mission for the region, so on and so forth. But we all know that the green revolution in India has happened because of price support. Price support has been very important for policy instrument to that has brought the country to its place where we have surplus. We are a food grain surplus nation. So in the same way, I think if northeastern region, if you want to help northeastern region, especially the farmers, 55% of the population, this is one intervention where the central government can come in and support the state government, because most of the state government. I've raised this question. I'm also an advisor of the farmers in my state, and we have taken this to all levels. We have met the governor and all. And what we understand is that the only reason why the state government is not coming forward with the price support, for the horticulture crop and other under the market intervention scheme is that they don't have this 25%, which they need to contribute from their side. So this is one aspect where I think government of India need to relook and to say, okay, how do we actually, because this is actually the money that will go to farmers. Many times when you have scheme, as you have, as Sir Inder has already said, that you have implementation issue. There's a lot of leakages also in the northeastern region. But in price support scheme, you don't have that because money will go directly to the farms. So this is one intervention that we need to look at. Now, if you come back to the, to the industrial policy, what I find in northeastern region is that if you look even at the new Northeast Industrial Development Scheme, you find that there's a lot of incentive. Of course, this new scheme now has shifted its focus more into the MSME enterprises, which is a sector which is very important. But then the major problem in the northeastern region is the skill. So if you look at the current literature on industrial policy, you will find that the current literature says that the way we look at industrial policy now has to change. It cannot be sectoral based. It has to be activities based. It has to be closely monitored. There must be a sunset clause, and more importantly, it has to be linked to the skill. Because you may have industries, you may have industrialists coming here, but the people are not getting benefited because they don't have the skills that is needed, to take advantage of this. If you look at the history of South Korea, the way South Korea has come up is because obviously of their outward orientation, their export-led policy, but also because of the way they look at the skilling process along with the industrial development. So this is something that I feel that is a gap that we need to explore. The third thing, and I will not take much of time, the third point I want to say is that there is one area that the government of India has totally neglected, has not, as yet looked into, is the aspect of the local government in the northeastern region, especially in the tribal area. Now, you know that in the tribal areas, sir, very well, that we have the autonomous councils, which is a local government instead of the Panchayati Raj institutions. All right. And these are not only PRIs in the sense, these are institutions these are mini government. They have and what they hold in their power, if you see, they have power to legislate on land, they have power to legislate on forests, they have power to legislate on labor, they have power to legislate on, trading. Now, these are any activities, you need land, you need labor, you need, permission, your licenses, trading licenses. But there has all, if you look at the PRIs, right from the 10 Finance Commission, there's been a lot of stress on PRIs, building the capacity of PRIs, so on and so forth. If you come to the local government in the Northeastern region, this has not been a priority. Now, if you look at the, the Government of India lately since 2016-17, the Government of India has given 1,000 crore to the ADCs, 1,000 crore to the ADCs to build up their capacity to help them in their, development work that they're doing. But what the Government of India is not saying is that there's been no, that would have been a perfect time to intervene in the ADCs, because what the ADCs, you cannot just give free fund to the ADCs. It should have come with conditionalities. Conditionalities is reform. Basically, the reform that can start with the ADCs is reform in their finances, sir, in their accounting structure. If you look at NIA, National Investigation Agency, when it was set up, the first case that the NIA took was to look into the 1,000 crore, leakage, misuse of fund in one of the ADCs, the North Kachar ADCs. And now these ADCs are very important. If you look from the point of security, we talk about Northeastern, we need to build up the security. Now, the ADCs are, local government that deals directly with the grassroots institutions. So when you build up the capacity, when you create reform, you will also help the reforming the, grassroots institutions in the Northeastern region. So I think these are the, level of intervention that I think, as EGROW, foundation can take up, and we need a voice in Delhi to say that, listen, besides all the different sectors that we have, sectoral approach to development, these are things that has not been done in the Northeastern region, and therefore we need to do. Someone has mentioned about, land reform in the Northeastern region. In my state, cadastral survey has not been done, sir. Out of 6,000 villages, only 36 villages cadastral survey has been done. There's no talk of land reform in the region. Why? Because land is under the local institution, which is under the ADC. So if you want to have cadastral survey, land reform in the Northeastern region, you can never have it unless you intervene, unless you go through the ADCs. Therefore, this is the time for us to focus on them, on these institutions, because they play a very important role in the development process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Umdor, for completing well within your allotted time. This will help the other participants who have little bit more time to ask questions. Thank you. And now we go to Dr. Sharma. Dr. Sharma, yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Inderjit. I will take not much time, and I straight away go to my presentation. Thanks to you and Professor Bez. I have to shorten some of my earlier part of the slide. Now, so Professor Bez has put forward some of the interesting development phases in the context of Northeastern India, which I will go through a brief one. It's just like giving title to what he have. No, I will just skip this one. This already. So I have grouped the development initiative, whatever, the policy intervention into three phases. The reorganization phase, which is a pre-liberalization phase where the Northeast states were going through a reorganization process, where more of a political process rather than an economic process. Later on, the NEC come into the picture in 1972. We have a regional planning phase. The second phase is the reorientation phase, which is quite interesting. Professor Bez has already put up his argument. Here, my line is also the same. This is a phase where the Indian government has realized that something is going through the Northeast India and is lagging far behind in development process, and something has to be done. This is the phase where the Shukla Commission come into the picture, the NLCPR, the opening of border trade, etc. And the third one, this is the rejuvenation phase. This is the phase where the approach has been more intense as compared to the previous phase. The coming up of donor, we have a separate ministry for the for this reason, and we have the Look East policy. We have Vision 2020. We have again the Egg East policy. Now let me go through each phase. I will skip this one. This is already gone through. This is also now. I will just give in interesting figures. This is up to the 10 plan. It's also holds true for up to the 12 plan, where the maximum trust has been given to the transport and communication and the power sector, more on basic infrastructure, connectivity. This is where the main trust infrastructure we're going through. Even apart from this, the plan allocation, the NLSCPR, we're going through for the development of infrastructure. Now, this is I will be focusing more on this recent phase with some interesting growth rate data. The first section is regarding the various growth figures comparing Northeast India and India. I have managed to collect from 1980s onward. This I will treat as the first phase of reorganization phase. Now, these two phases, the reorganizing the 1980s to 94, 94 to 2000, this is where the growth rate were growing lower than the national average. India was growing above or around 6, but Northeast were going through 3%. This is where Northeast, I think, has missed out to a certain extent because this is the growth rate. Now, 2004, 2013, the post-donor phase, the Northeast economic growth pace up, and it were going at a level at par with the national level. And quite interesting is that in the post Niti Aayog, which is simultaneously Modi also announced the Egg East policy. Maximum trust were given again on connectivity. Lots of funds were poured into it. So Indian and sectors like construction and service sector were growing. Okay, this is I'm given in the sectoral growth rate in the latter part of this slide, where you see the only sector the Northeast in recent time has missed out is the agricultural sector. This is quite a concern. Professor Umdor has also hinted in his publication where agriculture is still a neglected one in terms of the fund allocation, in terms of attention. Now, other even the service sector. Look at the construction sector. Huge construction funds were poured into it. That's why Northeast India is experiencing a higher more than growth rate as compared to the India's figure. Now, what we are experiencing right now. Now, it is interesting to look into that. The growth in service sectors are paving way for rapid opening of the region to the market economy. This is quite interesting. Now, we have also a continuous thrust on infrastructure, telecommunication, transport, road connectivity. Okay, this has, to a larger extent, has reduced the transaction cost among this region and paving a way for growth in manufacturing and some other high-value crops. Farmers are diversifying to high-value crops, which Dr. Inderjit has highlighted in his earlier presentation, where Northeast is having some fundamental growth taking place in the horticulture sector. Now, apart from that, construction and service-led growth is also pulling up certain industries which are related to them, like construction-related industry, like cement, fabrication, servicing industries are coming up, which are by nature medium and micro. Now, and other thing, part of the manufacturing is the handloom and handicraft. which once regarded as a sunset sector in the region, is now having a new lease of life because of the new technological improvement and fashion inputs. This is started to rebound in terms of production. Now, apart from this, that region is experiencing a fall in insurgency-related activities, which has unleashed the potential of human resources in the region, where we are seeing lots of growth taking place in the IT, hospitality, tourism sectors. Now, quite an interesting fallout of this process in recent times has been the emergence of a class, which a high income earning group, say contractors, those who are involved in formal setup, employed in say government sector or formal setup. These are people who have accumulated to some extent certain capital, who they are investing again in sectors like agro base in a small unit in terms of their size. This is happening now. I think this slide is not moving. Okay, now I will put certain weak spots what's happening in the Northeast. Okay, what are the missing link? Now I start with some strong statement. Now Northeast is a donor-driven economy. Donor in the sense that most of the states except Assam are being driven or driven by the funds coming from the central government. They are not able to self-sustain their economy. There is limited revenues. Now, other very important indicator of development, the per capita income. This is the latest figure. Now, it is still below national level, except for the state Sikkim. I think Sikkim and Meghalaya. All the other states are having an average per capita below the national level. Okay, this is quite disheartening, in spite of all the growth taking place. And moreover, this is one of the factors where most of the northeastern states are having a low SDG. Now, other factors which contributing to the low SDG are unemployment and poverty. Unemployment is also very high as compared to the India's figure, except for Sikkim and maybe I think Meghalaya are having, all the states are having high unemployment rate. Okay, this is very cause of concern. And one other aspect is regarding poverty. No doubt we have not coming out with latest figure on poverty, but the per capita income itself an indicator of poverty. Now, apart from that, we have very serious issues coming up in the tribal belt area. Okay, their livelihood challenges, which is quite starkly visible in our state, where tribal people are becoming more dependent on resources available around them, and even they are shifting to illegal poppy cultivation. This is rampant everywhere. This is very cause of concern, where their livelihood challenge, they have their livelihood dependence zoom cycle has reduced, and moreover the penetration of market has given them to earn more income. That's why they are depending more on and the natural resources seems to be forest produce are seems to be exhausted. That's why they are opting up to even at the level of illegal poppy cultivation. This is an area which we can have a serious discussion later on. Now, the other thing, the farm fundamentals are very still weak in India. In Northeast India, we have very low input use in terms of agriculture. I will give an example. The net irrigated area in Northeast India is only 13% as compared to India's almost 50%. And we have huge food grain deficit, roughly about 15 to 16% food grain deficit. We have livestock deficit. And moreover, even there is some changes taking place in the form of agricultural diversification towards high value crops. They are still sporadic in nature because of the missing supported mechanism. Sometimes they will increase their production. In some year, the production falls. It's not growing at a consistent level. And moreover, zooming is not still declining. It's where not to be. Now, apart from that, I have to refocus again to Dr. Inderjit. These are some of the issues which are pulling down sustainable development goals of the state. Now, apart from that, we have a very deficit in terms of soft infrastructure, say in banking, finance, credit, governance. Key. That is why, in terms of ease of doing business ranking, most of the states are above 20. I think 29th rank is common among all the states. Now, the must-have border trade, which Professor Bass has already talked about, is still unable to strike a chord with the productive base of the region. That's why we are not able to participate in this productive, holistic participation in the border trade is still missing. Still, rampant illegal trading and informal trade are going on. Now, this will be my last slide. Now, I'm focusing on certain areas where what the government, the central government, or what the states needs to do. I think the ministry, like donor, needs to be very proactive beyond the execution of fund allocation. They have to be more proactive in the emerging policy environment, like Sustainable Development Goals, Vision 2030 or 2030, whatever Act East policy. It is interesting to know that the Act East policy itself, I think it's not in the donor website, not a single term being used or not, if I'm not mistaken. And apart from that, the northeastern states needs to have a very coordinated effort in going for policies, participation like in the Act East policy, because at the individual level, except for Assam, all other states are small in terms of geography and economy. They cannot reap the benefit of Act East policy through on its own. We have to have a very coordinated efforts where we can push our a collective agenda. Now, so apart from that, we have to be focused on, or rather the policy must focus on linking productive base and trade, so that by strengthening the value chain, value addition, so that we can take maximum advantage in from the policy like Act East policy. So agriculture obviously has to be need a big push. It has been a long neglected sector. Now, apart from that, so we must come out from the dependency syndrome in terms of monetary. I will not say dependency syndrome only, because Northeast region has come a long way where some of the things or issues with where in some 30-40 years back are right now are already gone. We are producing, we are have certain comparative advantage in some areas. Okay, dependency, of course, it's in terms of monetary side, not necessarily in the whole on the real side, I must say. This is what I like to share with all the panelists and the participants. I will wind up here and we'll focus on more discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Now, although we are almost near the end of today's session, we are already 7:30, but because many of us, including me, took little bit more time than was allotted, still I would like to give an opportunity to some of the participants, maybe one or two interventions from any of the participants, but with the request, the participants in 10 seconds should identify himself, not only name, that whether he's a student or from some organization, which organization, and ask his crisp question in 30 seconds so that panelists can answer in next 1 minute. 1 or 2 interventions from participants if somebody wants.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes. Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, sir. So I am Vandana Parekh, and I am a post-graduation student. I'm pursuing labor studies and social production at Tata Institute of Social Science at Guwahati. So thank you so much for such an important session organized by EGROW. And my question is open to all the panelists. And my question is regarding identifying the problem when it comes to the gaps. While we see when the formulation of policies takes place pan-India, so do you think there's a gap between the policies that are formulated and the development in Northeast India? In the sense, like we talked about how relaxation in terms of not paying income tax was present in the Northeast. So, but sir, if there's a problem where illegal groups who hold power in certain ways, they come up and anyway take a part of your income, is the problem of the issue. Like people would rather pay the government for development instead of paying it to a group which doesn't use it for development. So the problem is that and not that of paying taxes. So in that sense, is the government identifying the right problem for this region while formulating a policy? And is there, and if that's not the case, formulation and implementation of policy is for us. So yeah, sir. So like winding up my problem, I mean to say is that the problem is not in the sense that Big Four is not here in the region. The problem is that I don't see the Big Four in the region in the anytime coming in the future. So in that sense.
Okay, Professor Umdor, would you like to react to this comment, question? Or maybe any other panelist want to react?
You see, the point is that somewhere at some point of time, the people of Northeastern region has to take ownership of their own development. As I said, the funds have been coming. Of course, certainly there are areas where the government has to help. Hand holding is still needed. Our capacity, there's so much that we don't have capacity. One of the things that Dr. Inder has raised about we've not been able to utilize the fund that is given to us is because of the lack of capacity. So, you know, if you look at Japan, the way Japan has intervened in Africa, in the development of Africa, you have beautiful case studies. They have followed a model called TIF, you know, and sequentially they've done it. Training, infrastructure, finance. Most of the time, the way we look at problem is we give the finance first, and then we expect the infrastructure to come along with it, and then the training come last. So as a result of it, we have example where we have fund that has been given to us to build a hotel in the middle of under tourism in the middle of a village, in a very nice spot, a tourist spot. But then the people doesn't have the capacity to run it. So I think we need to learn from development intervention that has happened elsewhere. And here I agree with the chairman. The role of the NEC is very important. We have talked about this. NEC cannot be another agency to disburse fund because we have enough agency disbursing fund. NEC has to be a think tank, you know, that will look into, and we need to learn. You know, no need to reinvent the wheel. There are several models that are there around the world where we need to see whether these models can fit into it. And, you know, certainly the one that I've just mentioned about is something that we can have a look at. And so for the moment, that will be all.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions from the participants?
Yes. Is it possible for me to ask? I'm Vikas Weber from Base University. I'm assistant professor at Base. So I have a couple of graphs to show. May I share?
I mean, because we are running short of time.
Yeah.
If you have some any specific question to ask,
exactly. I have
30 seconds. Please do that.
Yes, sir. So my question is this: shown in the graph. I think the bigger concern is the decline of Assam's per capita income, rather than focusing on the entire region. That's my first part. And as I can see from the graph, actually I'm working on Northeast, that is why I'm slightly concerned about it. Assam's per capita income has been going down significantly and consistently over the years. That's one part. In the second graph, I am just showing that all other 6 states of the region have consistently improved significantly. Tripura has emerged as the most important state. In fact, it is now the second largest economy in the region. I think we can take some lessons from Tripura. Do we have comments on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I request Professor Bezbaruah to react to this?
This also has come as a surprise. Probably you have compared Assam's per capita income compared to all India. In absolute terms or even real terms, not even in nominal terms, the government would like to claim that Assam has been growing very fast. Actually, I don't know about that, but the data, my data shows Assam's per capita income has not been going down as such, but relative to all India income, actually, all India per capita income issue, and Assam has a big gap, about 40% or something to catch up to do. If you look into the details of Assam's development, actually, it's not that entire population of Assam is actually is left behind. Actually, there are certain segments. So people of tea garden workers origin, or the immigrant agricultural workers who are immigrants. I'm not saying foreign national or anything, from Bangladesh. I mean, basically the East Bengal origin. These are two very important categories of people. They are very numerous also, and they are actually generally left behind in various indicators of human development. So there is a problem within Assam. I think our chairperson of this session also mentioned that within the things there are issues. But then if we have to take up all this, but I think you need to check your facts again, whether per capita income of Assam has been declining. I don't think it's absolute terms it can be declining, or maybe in the last COVID affected years is slightly different, but then generally it has been, I think in the after 2001, things are improving actually for Assam also. It's a very
This is as
fragile
percentage of,
recovery.
this is as percentage of all India, first graph. In the second graph, I
Yeah, so
show
the gap is increasing at least. Yeah, I'm
gap
trying
is
to say that.
increasing.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, it cannot
You
be
stated
going
the income going down. That is a very serious kind of a statement. It's kind of a
down.
recession. It's
Per
not
capita
happening.
income relative to that of India.
Yes, yes. But it's not because of the entire state. Of course, the state is facing some problem because the tea industry is now actually almost in a sunset kind of a situation here, and oil industry, oil it is not been producing a great deal. And secondly, all hydrocarbon industries are actually dirty industries. They are going to decline in the future. So I think Assam will have to find new areas for growth.
Assam's population is different than West Bengal, and that's population is different than Delhi, and that's population is different than other states. So this cannot be compared. So what we are doing is a futile exercise.
Okay, thank
Are
you,
you telling
Vikas.
me or the question asked?
Yeah, we can have one last question from the audience.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
One last
Hello,
question.
this is Amit Kumar. I have raised hand also earlier, so
Yeah.
it should be given opportunity.
Yes, Amit, this would be the last question.
Yeah, thank you. This side Amit Kumar from Ministry of Finance. Sir, I have worked earlier on certain aspects of. There was a report on that. One quick question is that there is an unutilized capacity under the centrally sponsored schemes. Data is given. If you take the ratio of release to the utilization ratio, in the month of March, they first of all two problems. In month of March, they require more than 25% fund for the schemes. So when at the end of end quarter they release more than 25%, so there's a problem in that. And secondly, they are left with so much unspent balance annually at the basis, which lead to the reason of unutilized capacity. Is there any suggestion from the panelists how to improve that situation or work towards that? Thank you.
Yes, Amit, possibly, I mean, I can, having worked in donor for 2.5 years, I can answer this question. It's a very vicious cycle where sometimes we land into absorption capacity, unutilized funds and all that. Let me tell you, sometimes finance ministry takes a very different definition, different from even their own late on definition of unspent balances, because the finance ministry's instructions allowed a particular fund release to be utilized over a period till the next end of the next financial year, which on an average gives a period of about 1.5 year plus to the states to utilize. But sometimes just with a view to ensure that funds are there due to shortage of funds towards the end of the month, they say ki if there's a lot of unutilized balances. So unutilized balances in that sense, at any point of time, if you release a particular amount in the month of February or March or January, it is bound to be available because each project has a gestation period, and even Finance Ministry's instructions allow that period. So what is important is the total how much uses have become due. I always used to argue with Finance Ministry, the most important parameter is not unspent balances. It is how much overdue uses are there. Overdue uses are a better parameter to judge whether states are utilizing that funds properly or not. Anyway, to cut short this point, because we are running short of time, I think it's time to wind up.
Can you give me 30 seconds for answering, adding
sure.
to what you have said?
Sure.
Okay. Actually, we did one study sponsored by Planning Commission on this. Professor Umdor was also part of it. There we found actually is that two things. I mean, sometimes the fund flows take a lot of time, I mean, basically reaching the fund in the where the department is going to spend. Second thing is that there is some amount of laxity among the part of state governments, in providing utilization certificate. After you spend 60%, you have to give the utilization. Those things are not very properly done. I mean, this is a governance weakness, I have to say. Unlike the states in the south or Gujarat, these are one of the problems. But when the money actually, so there are two parts. One is that fund flow is not very, sort of there are blocks there, and secondly, governments. And other thing is that when the money was given on mission modes, two things: Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and also National Rural Health Mission, utilization was far superior. So of course, the government was not very comfortable later on these, mission mode kind of, transfers. But I mean, something need to be thought about. Like what you have suggested is also great. Need to be thought about how the fund can be flowing swiftly and utilized also properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just adding into that, there is that just to give the awareness to the participants also, the Government of India has a mandate just in time release right now. So there was a OM by the PFM, and second part in that, all that we are in the digital mode post-COVID world,
Yes,
and
yes.
there is a report by the IMF, digital public finance, digitalizing the government finance. So for that part, they have to, all the implementing agency must adopt the expenditure advance system, which is run by the PFM. In centrally sponsored schemes, you will find that many of the state government have not joined that platform. So payments are still by hand, checks and all that. They are not bank to bank transfer. Though that is a serious problem.
Amit, let me interrupt you here. Amit, this is factually not correct now. It was implemented fully. All donor releases were made through PFMS, number one. Number two, donor fully implemented just-in-time releases with any project, irrespective of its size, whether it was a 1 crore project or a 100 crore project, only 10 lakh will be released initially just to facilitate tender formalities. The first installment of 40% will be released only and only when work order is released. It was unlike earlier practice where first installment was released along with sanction order, and there were cases where some of the states misutilized that amount. Yeah, what you are talking is which used to happen earlier, but not anymore. To a great extent, I mean,
you are right.
maybe still some lacuna here and there, 1%, 5%. I'm not denying that, but lot has happened in the last 2 to 3 years, and things have changed drastically in terms of states not now doing check payments. It is all 8 states are on board. All implementing agencies have been registered under PFMS. All releases are made only through that system.
Mr. Amit, I just
Yes,
want
sir,
to
you are right. You are right. I just correcting my point because my statement was correct for the all India level, because the reason for that in the centrally sponsored scheme in case of Northeast is 90:10 ratio. And in other parts of the other states of India, ratio was a 50:50. So that is the reason that in other states we have a series of this problem. So this problem still prevails. And you are correct that might be the problem, gravity of the problem is less in the case of northeastern states.
Yeah, that's right. No, the moment you say the gravity of problem is less in northeastern state, that itself is a matter of happiness for all of us. Otherwise, we all always think that northeast has a bigger problems in terms of utilizations and all that.
That's a huge compliment. Thank you very
I
much.
should say. So now time has come to wind up today's very useful discussion. First
Chairman,
of
sir,
must thank
I have a
my
suggestion.
I must panelists today, Professor Bezbaruah, Professor Umdor, Dr. Sharma, and I must thank EGROW Foundation, especially Dr. Charan Singh, for having organized this important webinar. And I take this opportunity to thank all the participants. I'm also feel apologetic for not being able to give opportunity to many more participants who were wanting to ask very important questions just due to lack of time. I wish next time when we do, the speakers should speak little bit less, including me, and give more time to the participants. So my initial plan actually was we give minimum half an hour to the participants and we wind up in 1 hour. Unfortunately, we could not do that. But before I finally wind up and close, I just want to make participants and including panelists aware of one thing. When during my last period of donor, we did one very out of box thing. So I'm provoking you so that you also get in touch with the donor ministry to check the status of that. You know, when I joined donor as secretary, a lot of NGOs and other organizations used to come to me for conducting various studies in the Northeast. On this topic or that topic, they used to say that donors should fund various studies. So when I realized that a lot of such proposals are coming, I was finding it difficult to choose. You know, I did propose something very unique and out of box, which initially even my people said, sir, this has never happened. I said, let's make it right. You know, what was that? That was called study of studies. I said, already so many studies have happened in the Northeast in the past decades. Rather than doing more and more studies, let me first of all compile and analyze all those studies which have already happened in the last 10 years. I put a limit of 10 years. And initially, despite some resistance in going for the project, ultimately we took it, everybody on board. And we did a competitive bidding, this project through a competitive bidding, asking that the whole objective of this project is not to do a new study, but initially compile and analyze all studies, sector-wise, state-wise, region-wise, agency-wise, all kinds of compilation and analysis had to be done. And by the time I left in August, interim report of this agency had already come. And to my great surprise, they have given a list of 1,000+ studies in different sectors, in different areas, some of which were pan-Northeast, some of these were regions covering 3 to 4 states, some were only state specific, some were only even a part of a state. And it would be of interest to all the panelists and other participants by the time now donor might have got the final report and analysis part of the report. When I left, only the list of studies had come. This had to be followed by the final part, which was analysis, because I told them also study what were the recommendations of these studies in different sectors, why those could not be implemented, what are those recommendations which still are valid even today, although it might have been given 4 years, 5 years, 6 years back, and what can be done to those implement valuable recommendations of those studies. So I thought I'll provoke all of you with this information, and you can make best use of that so-called study of studies, which donor ministry may be soon publishing its final report. It should be in public domain, should not be in a confidential matter. With these words, I thank all of you once again, and we close today's discussion. Mr. Dr. Charan Singh may like to say something before we formally disconnect.
So I must thank all of you for such an excellent discussion. It's been very, very rich, right from the point go when the chairperson of the session made such an elaborate presentation, and right till the end It has been a very, very rigorous discussion. It has been a very enriching discussion, and I'm sure each one of us have benefited from it. I would seek forgiveness from the chairperson. I'm too keen, we may not answer it, but I'm too keen to know two questions. One is from Mr. Thanga Singh Gute, and one is from Enendu. Both of them have been writing repeatedly saying, please listen, please listen. So, because we are so badly short of time, it's already nearly 2 hours we have been in this session. Can I request Anandu and Mr. Gute to simply tell their question so that we know what their issues were? But please be brief. Then I want to share some information before we close with you. Yeah, so Mr. Gute?
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm currently a PhD scholar in ISR Mohali, Punjab. And my question goes to all the panelists. If you look at the policies of Northeast from, say, the time of inception, the approach has been very much top-down approach. And somewhere in this process, people are lost in translation. Like we have not seen the people-centric development. So do you think that perhaps changing the paradigm from top-down approach or bottom-up approach would maybe perhaps change the realities that we are seeing today?
Okay. And Anandu, you want to say what is the question you want to ask? Anandu? I think he might have. That's okay. So I would now like to continue with my observations. As you have seen, the discussion was so rich, but I have also felt that we sitting in rest of India, other than Northeast, are not familiar with the issues of Northeast. I'll be honest with you. And I'm so happy that as secretary donor, a study has been conducted, a study of studies. In a way, it'll tell us, all of us, the list of studies that have been done in Northeast. I think that should become a Bible for all of us, because I have always felt that Northeast is one such region which can drive India's growth by at least 2 incremental percentage points. So I'm thankful to you, and I'll be keenly looking forward to that study of studies. And I think it should be on the table of every development economist in our country. I would also like to share that I will be discussing with the chairperson of the session today whether we can place it on our website tomorrow, the recording. And if we will permit, we will put it on the website by noon tomorrow. The last announcement I want to make is next week, next Friday, same time, we have Professor Michael Weber from Chicago booth talking to us about the expected, perceived, and realized inflation of US households before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a very important topic. And you know that in the US, the interest rate cycle is changing. And here is a study which Professor Michael Weber would be doing on our EGROW website, discussing about the inflation pattern expected, perceived, and realized in the US before and during the pandemic. So I would invite each one of you to please join us and benefit from this discussion. With this, I would like to once again thank each one of you to be here, the chairperson for being here and bringing the richness of his experience, and the 3 panelists from Northeast sharing your concerns with us. Each one of you have been very honest, frank, and transparent, and we would like to thank you for that. The participants have also enriched our discussion and understanding. Would like to even thank all of you for those contributions. Once again, thanks again, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We can.
Thank you.
Thank you.